MLS Aces Podcast. This is your host, Tom Sweezy. This is episode 266. And joined with me this week is not both Jason and Sam. It's just Jason, but that doesn't mean it's going to be any worse. It just means that we got a lot of one-on-one conversation going. Jason Vivang, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. I just realized now I forgot to change my name here again.
Again, it's fine. Pretty much.
It's been like this for like 100 episodes.
It's Jason Vivang on Twitter or X. Are we calling it X?
I'm calling it Twitter.
Yeah, it's Twitter.
I heard someone call it 10, and that threw me off.
Oh,
because X is a Roman numeral for 10, and I was like, "What are you talking about? You're gonna post on 10."
That might be more wild than calling it X. It's calling it.
I was
10.
like, "It is not 10."
That just threw me for a mind fuck. That person no longer needs to be your acquaintance, friend, family member, whatever.
I don't even remember who it was, so I don't think they're
good. Kick them out of your life. That's probably
in the inner circle.
I feel like, and you brought this up, and I feel like it's probably a good point to start off this week's episode with, because last week was a little bit of a catch up from from us taking our break. And for whoever watched or listened last week after that long break, thank you so much for
we appreciate it
to that. And then if you haven't yet, or if this is the first one you're seeing since the break, then go back and watch last week's episode, watch this one, and we'll keep doing what we're doing. No more breaks. That is a promise that I am making out loud, mainly to myself, but I guess to the people watching and listening to this, and you too, Jason. The one disappointing thing, actually, before we get into some news, is Sam won the game last week, and he was supposed to have a game to start the episode.
Oh man,
Sam's not here.
I could have.
So angry comments, angry tweets towards Sam, please, is what I want.
Ooh.
I thought you had something there, so I stopped. But
I was gonna say like, oh, maybe I can think of a game right now, and then I realized there's not a chance in hell I'm gonna think of a game right now.
It's also difficult playing the game with one person, but it's fine.
True.
It's all good. So we'll wait until we have Sam back, or we have a third guest co-host, which I'm gonna try to wrap into some conversations if Jason or Sam can't make it. There was one pretty notable name that told me if I asked 24 hours earlier, he would have been able to be here. So for the future, and that's pretty much it. But going back to the news that I said we chatted about a little bit last week, that was kind of an open-ended question mark, and it was one talking point that I had of why isn't this guy on a roster playing soccer yet, was Florian Balogun. I don't think it is confirmed yet as of the clubs, but as Fabrizio Romano reported, and there's been multiple reportings that a medical went on today, August 29th, Florian Balogun is going to AS Monaco from Arsenal. It is apparently a 40 million euro deal. The 22-year-old USMNT striker had 22 goals and 3 assists last season in France for Stade Reims. He also, in his career has an additional 31 games between Arsenal and Middlesbrough. In those games has another 5 goals and 4 assists. But really, I think last year was his breakout year, I think, for his career, both internationally and at the club level. So, Jason, I'll start with you in the sense of, we kind of chatted a little bit last week about Balogun should be playing first team soccer. He should be playing at a high level. It's, pretty much like a guarantee that he is one of the best young stars in global soccer. Do you like Balogun going back to League? Not going back to, but going to Monaco?
Yeah, I mean, so I really like that he went back to League on whatever. I can't speak French, so I'm just gonna say one because it's how I always do it. But to me, like, I think this is a great move. I think Monaco is a higher profile team than Stade Reims, and I think currently Monaco is actually top of the league. 10 goals for, 5 goals against. Obviously, it's early. But I think overall, like, this is what we were asking for. Just get out from Arsenal, because obviously that's not where he's going to get the playing time. And I think at Monaco, he will get more playing time. I'm not sure exactly, all of Monaco's setup and tactics. I'm not going to pretend to know their choices, but
Yeah.
I think in the end, like he's definitely going to see time, whether that's in a reserve role or coming off the bench or starting. I think he's good enough to start some games. And obviously, after last season, you read the stats: 22 goals, 3 assists. That's incredible. He was easily one of the top scorers. I think he was in the top 5. I honestly don't remember exactly
He
where
was
he
top
finished.
5 in France or in
Yeah.
league on last year. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that speaks for itself. He's going back to a league that he pretty much had a major amount of success in. And I think Monaco knows that, is going to know that, sees their chances here sees the possibility at a chance to get Champions League next season.
Yeah.
And I think that's a massive step up for him. I think like the sky is really the limit here, because with Balogun, if he can solidify himself in the team, get a nice role going, get back to that form that he was in last season, which I mean, we know he has it. So as long as he can get there, he's going to get consistent minutes. He's going to keep playing. He's going to be impossible to bench if in that scenario. And he's just going to get better and better. And then maybe Monaco is a stepping off point to even a bigger club and a bigger club. And, you know, you never know where he goes next. But I think at least for now, I'm very happy with this move and the opportunities for him that it provides.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm an expert in French soccer, you know, outside of
I can't even say most French words.
at this point, you know, I mean, like I act like I know how to say the word one when I say you know, like that's pretty much it. But like at this point, you know, like I don't even really know much about like PSG with Neymar gone, Messi gone, and all that stuff, right? Like I couldn't tell you much about what's going on with the biggest club. I just know they're not in first place, like you mentioned. Monaco is sitting atop the table. They do have the best goal differential and everything like that. Their leading goal scorer right now is Ben Yedder, who I know is a veteran of the game right now. He has 4 goals in 3 games, you know, in the French First Division. Right now, they also have Briol Mbolo, who's injured on the bench. Again, I know another very talented Swiss striker globally, right? So it's not like Balogun's going to step in with zero competition going on at the club. Ben Yedder's very good, and I know Briol Mbolo is very good. But from what I'm seeing on Transfermarkt, and shout out Transfermarkt, literally one of my favorite resources for soccer, is Monaco's lined up in all 3 of their games so far this season in a 3-4-2-1. So
yeah,
kind of like what DC's done in Major League Soccer this year is just how I'm picturing it. Ben Yedder started up top in all 3 of those games. You know, I know Ben Yedder's a little versatile, so maybe he takes a step back into like that 2 that sits right underneath the striker for a Balogun. Maybe Balogun's coming off the bench until he can prove that he's better than Ben Yedder, you know, and then we'll see, you know, what happens there. But Monaco is a good team. I think Monaco has a real shot from what I can see on paper at winning the league, and it would be nice to have the USMNT striker being the starting striker for the French, you know, winning club in this European season. So we'll see. I'm not saying I love it, but I do like a little bit of competition for Balogun, not to just step in and, you know, at 22 years old, think he's the best striker in the room type of deal.
I think there's actually there is some hope, I guess. So in all those games, they've had Ben Yedder at the 9, right? But they've had Takumi Minamino, who was a Liverpool player, so I'm actually pretty familiar with him. And then Alexander Golovin behind. And I honestly, I could almost see them rotating that a little bit if they need Balogun at the 9. But I would not be super opposed to seeing Balogun play behind Ben Yedder and just see what he can do in that space, see if he can make some connections, and then do some of those. If Ben Yedder can do some hold-up play, I'm not entirely familiar with Ben Yedder's play. You know, I don't watch him every weekend. But I could see Balogun making some of those later runs into the box as that pairing behind with Minamino or Golovin, and potentially scoring a lot from there. But I think Monaco doesn't make this signing without a solid plan or idea of what they want, right? It's not a cheap signing. It's 40 million euros. So I'm pretty confident at the very least he's coming on for Ben Yedder every game.
I would feel pretty confident that he's either going to take a starting spot somewhere in this 11, or he's going to, be the first guy off the bench type of deal. And look, it's long seasons. He's going to start. He's going to get performances. He's going to get opportunities to score. And, you just hope at the end of the day that he takes advantage of those opportunities. And Monaco, I know probably with the state of league on not being the best in the world right now, you have to take the opportunities you can get and then hopefully kind of build off of this. Maybe Monaco becomes one of the new powerhouses of soccer in the next 10 years. I don't know, but you just hope for the best.
Ben Yedder did have a very good season last year, too.
He's a good player.
19 goals and 6 assists. So it was.
I mean, who had a better season is Florian Balogun scoring the ball. But
goal contributions actually technically Ben Yedder was above him, but we're not gonna go there.
Whatever. Someone came from the Premier League, and then that's all that matters in my brain. But shout out Florian Balogun. Hopefully he can start, score, and build upon something and become our number one striker, because God, we need a definitive number one striker at the USMNT. Let's move to a topic. It's gonna be your third bullet point, Jason, but let's move to a topic that we also talked about a little bit last week, just to kind of close some conversations, I think, from last week's episode. And let's talk about the New England Revolution goalkeeper room. So, last week it wasn't absolutely official yet, but it is official now that the New England Revolution have sold goalkeeper Djordje Petrovic to Chelsea FC in the Premier League. If you guys don't know who Djordje Petrovic is, then you don't really watch MLS, and that's fine. We're going to sit here and teach you a little bit about MLS if this is where you're trying to get into the league a little bit. He was a 2023 MLS All-Star this season. He was Matt Turner's replacement. If you guys don't know, Matt Turner was sold to Arsenal last year by the Revolution. He had 48 appearances for New England during his time in the U.S. across all competitions. He had 15 shutouts in those 48 appearances. Not a bad little shutout to appearance ratio there. But the talented, youngster got the move to Chelsea. Apparently, he's going to have the opportunity to compete with Robert Sanchez. It's one of the two. I forgot his first name. R. Sanchez. He's going to have the opportunity to compete with Sanchez as Chelsea's starting goalkeeper, apparently, which is wild that an MLS keeper is going to move and potentially be a starter in the Premier League at such a young age, but whatever. So I think first and foremost, Djordje Petrovic, thank you for your contributions. You go on and have a great career. But just to kind of wrap up some of the moves that have gone on around the New England Revolution locker room, I would say, is they also, in, I think, conjunction with Petrovic's sale, went out and signed a contract extension for a current goalkeeper on the roster, Earl Edwards Jr., who's been the backup keeper for Petrovic for most of this season. And then New England also went out and signed free agent goalkeeper Thomas Vaclic. I'm going to go for it.
Vaclic.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I know Tom.
Right.
Wow. I'm dumb. I'm really dumb. I'm reading this as.
This guy topped out at 18 million on transfer market.
I know who Thomas Vaclic is. I'm reading this as Thomas Vaclic, and I'm like, this is what happens when you're an American and you can't.
We also spend so much time looking at different players' names, so you cut Tom some slack.
You know what? I should have honestly paired it together, and I was like, oh, he won a Europa League with Sevilla. Probably should have paired that together a little bit, but if this is your first time to the podcast, I'm dumb, and that's also a fair point to point that there. But Thomas Vaclic, Vaclic, 34-year-old keeper, I think he's former. I don't think he plays for the Czech Republic anymore. He still might at this point. I don't fucking know clearly, but obviously, like I said, he's had a long career in Europe, 500 games played for the likes of Basel, Sevilla, Olympiacos, and so on. He did win a Europa League title with Sevilla. He's obviously a very good goalkeeper there. He's won titles and cups in Switzerland, in Greece, in the Czech Republic. He's been the Czech Republic Footballer of the Year as well. Like, he has a very long, successful career. He's a very good goalkeeper, and I know this, and I've watched him played in Europa League. I'm just an idiot and didn't recognize that it was him, so that's fun. But he is going to come in, and he is going to be the Djordje Petrovic replacement, which I'm way more excited about now that I realize who he is. So, Jason, I'm going to stop putting my foot in my mouth, and I'm going to let you go.
So he was on the bench this year for the European
Yeah.
qualifiers. So he's still around the team, whether he's going to get more playing time. He's at least not retired from the Czech national team. But yeah, I mean, you kind of said a lot about him. Like,
sorry, I meant just like your thoughts right now with Petrovic gone,
I
Edwards
think this
getting
is
the extension.
I want to say it from Vasili's perspective because I think this is a great move. Obviously, he's a little bit older. He's 34, but this is a guy that has so much experience, and they're going from kind of Matt Turner and Petrovic that are less experienced, right, than a guy who has won a Europa League, right? He's got over 2,000 minutes in the Champions League. 71 matches played in La Liga. Like, he's been around. He knows what he's going to come in there to do. I think at this point, coming in mid-season, it's a really good signing because it's someone who's not going to be necessarily shocked right away from just getting thrown into goal because it's pretty much what they're going to ask him to do. And New England is in an interesting position, I think, in the table where they're sitting third right now, technically tied for second. On 43 points in the East, but it's super tight. I mean, 2 through 6 is all 2 points. So this is a pretty big point in their season. They made a lot of money, right? And I don't know if there was a fee.
He was a free agent, so
I mean, so then even more. It's even better. They're making. I think we talked about it last week, but now it's what, like 20 or 19 million off of 2 keepers.
Maybe a little bit more, yeah.
17 plus like 5. I don't remember what Turner went
6.
for. 6. So, yeah. Well, I'm not going to. It's 23.
Yes, 23 and a half.
24 almost.
Yeah.
That's a crazy amount of money. And they can sort of finish out this season. They still have a solid team. They have a solid goalie now that's going to come in and probably be able to kind of fit seamlessly.
Yeah.
And they'll finish out the season, and then they got an extra $20 million to spend. So I think they're in a pretty good position. I think a lot of teams could not lose 2 keepers of Turner and Petrovic's status and us sit here and be like, oh, they're going to be okay probably. But New England, it might be the rare case that this might be fine.
New England's an interesting conversation in the sense of, like, you just laid it out perfectly, right? Like, in the table standings right now, they're still in a pretty good spot. If you're looking at the overall league table, they're 4th, or tied for 3rd, I guess, in the Supporter Shield standing as far as points go. And they're only 9 points off the top, with still a little bit of a chunk of game left to go, right? So New England's sitting in a spot where realistically you could argue that they're still in the running for the Supporter Shield. Brandon Bye out for the season. He just tore his ACL. I think he had successful surgery today. So, good on you, Brandon, and hopefully we can get you back soon. One of the best right backs in Major League Soccer. Bruce Arena's still away from the team right now with whatever type of interesting situation he has going on. I don't know what he said, whatever about that as of right now. Until we know more, we'll make some determinations at that point. And, like this season, I think Vasilic is almost the perfect situation to come in. Even if he's a 6-month loan and he's just finishing out the season and whatever, finishing up his career type of deal, then, like, sure, it is what it is. He's going to come in and he's going to be playing goalkeeper probably at a pretty high level for a team that's looking to win a trophy in 2023. I don't know about the future. There's probably information on the website about how long the contract was. I didn't see it, so apologies about that. But if I'm looking at it strictly for kind of like a 6-month signing type of deal, just to be able to stay competitive and potentially win something this season, great. The one thing that I think Herculez Gomez pointed out on Twitter about the New England Revolution, which is a question I want to ask you because I think it's a pretty interesting conversation here, is how do you think, if you're a New England Revolution fan, you feel that your club has made a lot of money in the last few years when you talk about the sales of Petrovic, Turner, Tajon Buchanan, is another big one that I'm probably forgetting off the top of my head. The striker, he went to France. Adam Buxa. Jeez.
Mm.
Okay. There's like all these players New England's had. They've won a ton with. They've even won a supporter shield with. And with all the talent that you've had on pretty much 1-2 rosters, you have not won an MLS Cup. How would you feel if you're a New England Revolution fan that you clearly had all this talent in the world and the organization's deciding to sell, and not really maybe focus on winning right now?
Did they not win like right before that though?
An MLS Cup?
Not MLS Cup, but didn't they win a supporter shield?
They did win a supporter shield. I guess
2021.
if they think they broke the points record with it too, but
I think you're asking the wrong person because I'm a Fire fan, and if they won the supporter shield and broke the record for points in the season at that point of time, I would be ecstatic. I get what you're saying. Like, there's a lot of talent. Not winning MLS Cup is sort of like, how didn't you? But at the same time, like, it's not that easy, right? Like, LAFC broke the record in that time span. Atlanta might have broken the record, or TFC way back when, before them. But
I would just argue that all of the 3 teams you just mentioned, and I would even put NYCFC into that category with the
right,
fire
because
sale
they won MLS Cup, correct?
Yeah. All those teams have won an MLS Cup. New England, at some point, Atlanta won one, LAFC got theirs, NYCFC got theirs. New England haven't done it. New England haven't.
Also, bringing in Bruce Arena, present issues excluded, was a signing that I think a lot of people were like, this is to win MLS Cup.
100%.
Right? Like, that's a guy who's been around the block. He's won things. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess on the one hand, I just think I might not be the right person to answer this just because I've literally never even had a hint of success in like 20 years.
Yes,
but
I understand.
I get like where they'd come from with like, wow, we made all this money, we made like blah, I feel that way with the Fire. The Fire have made a shitload of money in the last couple of years off of selling players, and literally nothing's gotten better. I don't think they're making the playoffs this year, despite their current standing. But to me, it's like they still won Supporter Shield, which I guess in my mind I still rate pretty highly.
As a trophy, yeah.
Yeah, as just like a trophy. But yeah, I mean, I could see where people would say like, oh, we didn't win MLS Cup. All, like you said, all those other teams I mentioned have won MLS Cup in the last 6 years or so. So
yeah, Atlanta may be a little bit older, but yeah.
Yeah, so it is sort of like what was it all for, I guess.
I mean,
especially since like after that record-breaking season, I don't feel like they've reached, and they've also had a pretty bad season a couple of years ago. For like coming off of where they were at, they have not even come close to those heights.
I'm trying to think of who was the manager before Bruce Arena. It was it's gonna bother the hell out of me. Whatever, doesn't matter. But pre-Bruce Arena, this team was not good, and they had their success, and Bruce Arena did bring that success with them. And they still had talent on the roster, like DeJuan Jones and Brandon Bye have been on this roster for a long time. You bring Matt Polster back from Scotland. You start to make the move slowly, and obviously, you look at a Gustavo
Lapper.
I think that was the interim, if I'm not mistaken.
For Brad Friedel.
Brad Friedel, that was the guy. Yeah, I forgot about Friedel.
I read it backwards. It was like Brad Friedel was the intern. I was like, wait, no, he wasn't.
But you look at the players that New England's had. In the last few years, you've had some of the best players at their position in the league. You've had an MLS MVP in a Carles Hill. You've had so many talented guys come through, and the fact that I think probably I would argue for a team that's been pretty good for half a decade now at this point, you've come away with just the Supporter Shield trophy. I mean, look, maybe that's coming from a selfish fan point of view, but it's like if I'm a New England fan, I'm a little pissed off that we've made a bunch of money. We've had some.
Well, they've made the playoffs pretty much every season.
For the last
a decade.
4, 5, 6 seasons. Whatever.
So in that scenario, then it's like, yeah, why haven't we won anything? Like, I mean, it's hard. It's not and
No.
they keep adding more teams, and it's getting harder. So on the one hand, I'm like, it seems kind of ridiculous to just expect that they won, because despite the talent, despite you could have all the talent and still lose, because in a one-off game in September, October, November, December, like you never know. Like you just don't know, especially because these teams are so close at the top, right? Like currently, just to take this year as an example, outside of FC Cincinnati, you have like 6 or 7 teams all within like 5 points, including both Eastern and Western teams.
Yeah.
Like it's just heavy at the top and it's close. And that's not even going to say like even some of those mid-tier teams, like Inter Miami could still squeak into the playoffs. That's not going to be a team that's going to be fun to play.
No, for sure. And we'll talk about the Inter Miami, I think, hopes in a little bit. I want to get into that conversation, but I think just to wrap it up is I'm not saying, it was a guarantee that New England won an MLS Cup in the last 5 or 6
You said
seasons.
It's pretty easy. NYCFC did it.
Yeah, come on.
So it must be easy.
I just think at the end of the day, right, like if I'm a Revs fan, I'm a little salty that at some point we didn't come away with more than just one piece of silverware.
I think it's hard when you're that good to keep a lot of those guys.
Yeah.
I think it's just hard, and other teams come calling, and a lot of these players want that springboard to Europe. So, I mean, you mentioned a few, but Buchanan is a good example. Petrovic this year is a good example. It's like they're playing really well, and then they're getting these moves to Europe, which is, I think, the goal for especially the younger players like Buchanan. So it's just hard. It's hard to remain being good, and it's hard to be good.
No, and it's not that like New England's not going to have a few more leave their roster soon, right? Like Noel Buck probably going to be gone to Europe. He's a talented youngster. DeJuan Jones, I know, apparently has had a lot of interest around European clubs. Like New England's going to continue to lose players and probably make a lot of money, but it just comes down to, balancing that. Like I think, like I'd argue Philadelphia or Cincinnati has, and being able to balance that, but also remain playing at a high level in Major League Soccer. But
in Cincinnati, I feel like it's a little early to say it, right? Because this is like really the first. I think you could say like old Kansas City teams, they stayed good for a long time.
Yeah, I'm saying balancing being able to produce talent, sell talent, but being also then at the same exact
Philly is really the peak of that. Philly really is.
Oh, it's Philly. Child. Yeah. The reason why I said Cincinnati is because
it's like if it's good at MLS play.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's difficult, right? Like Montreal, I think really good at selling talent to Europe. I'm going to say Montreal has dipped with some of the dipped in level of talent and production in Major League Soccer with the sales to Europe and stuff like that. So
a team that just beat New England.
Exactly, literally. And I think one team that we're seeing dip in production in Major League Soccer after selling is NYCFC. And this is more for me. So Jason, if you have, a point you want to say at the end here, definitely toss it in. But I'm going to just go on a little bit of a bitching rant here. So I'm just warning you and all the listeners now. So if you don't want to hear me bitch about NYCFC, just hit that, fast forward 30-second button and you'll probably skip forward to us talking about something else. But NYCFC have sold what I'm going to call the last OG of this club in center back Maxime Chanot. They sold him to French second division side AC Ajeko. I don't know. We butcher French on this podcast.
Ajaccio? I don't know. That sounds more
probably
Italian.
Better. That
sounds fine. Italian though.
But there was no reported number around Chanot's sale. He is, older. He's in his early 30s. He has been with the club now for 7.5 seasons. Chanot is NYCFC's second. He's second all time in the club's appearances, right behind Sean Johnson. Chanot finished with 199 appearances for the club. That is going to annoy the shit out of me.
No.
One game off of a minute off of subbing in and saying you played 200 games for the club, but whatever. Sean Johnson, by the way, for people listening, had 206 appearances for the club. So 7 games short of Sean Johnson there. With NYCFC, Chanot was an MLS Cup champion, a Campeones Cup champion, and arguably, I'm going to say, the best center back to ever play at the club. In his 199 appearances, he played roughly 17,000 minutes with 10 goals and an assist. And the larger part of me being upset that Chanot's gone, outside of, I think he came out and made a statement that, he's a Luxembourg international, but he grew up in France, so he wanted to go back and finish up his career playing in France. And I understand that and respect to him. And I'm happy for him if this was his wish that he said it was. But right now, the NYCFC front office is in absolute shambles. The team is playing awful form. Nick Cushing can't coach his way out of a plastic bag right now. It's absolutely awful for an NYCFC team that, yes, has lost a lot of familiarity with guys like Kyan, Sean Johnson, Bear, Anton Tinnerholm, Maxime Chanot now, Nicolas Acevedo, Thiago, Gabi Pereira, Tati Castellanos. The list goes on and on of talented NYCFC players that have left this roster. So the club, I think, is in a really transitional bad spot. And unfortunately, right now, I've defended the guy, I think, as much as I could, but I am on the hashtag Cushing Out train that if you are on NYCFC Twitter, you see going around. There are plenty of NYCFC Twitter accounts changing their photo to Cushing's face with a big red X over it, pretty much. It's clear and obvious that Nick Cushing is the next manager to get fired in Major League Soccer, and I don't expect him to be the manager in 2024. I just don't think the club's going to make any changes until then. I think they're just going to have him ride out this season. It's tough. I'm not happy with where the club is winning MLS Cup 2 seasons ago. It's not even like we're that far off. We've made the signings. I just think tactically we're a little bit of a mess. I think leadership-wise we're a little bit of a mess. And I think the front office is absolutely doing some overly negative shit to this club, and I'm not happy as an NYCFC fan. My comments have been made on social media, and I've been in email conversations with some people as well. It is what it is. I'm just also making this very well known on the podcast, and this is 1,000% gonna get clipped for social media too. So that is all I have to say. Thank you, Maxime. NYCFC, you're a mess right now, and yeah, that's all I got there.
Fun fact.
Yeah.
Sean Johnson has played the exact same amount of MLS games for NYCFC as he has for the Fire.
I mean, look, Sean John's our guy. I'm very upset with what's going on with him up in Toronto because I love Sean John. I know you love Sean John.
We might be the most loved Sean Johnson podcast that exists.
NYCFC fans and Chicago Fire fans. It's the one thing
who loves goalkeepers.
Yeah. I don't think there's I don't even know if there's any other player that's played for both Chicago and NYCFC, but I mean, whatever, we'll I guess we'll move forward into a bad transition of speaking of Toronto FC. TFC did hire their next manager after Bob Bradley was fired earlier this year, and they've been operating under the interim manager status. Now, former Canadian men's national team manager John Herdman will take over at Toronto FC. Jason, I've been speaking a lot. You want to break down Herdman?
Yeah, so Herdman is leaving the Canada men's national team job. He was the former women's national team manager for Canada. There's been some, massive drama in Canada's national team scenarios here. Yeah, it's a big mess with bankruptcy filings potentially for Canada's national team and federation. But both teams were actually really good, despite having some pretty bad World Cups.
Despite the federation being just a fucking not caring about the soccer teams.
To me, this is just still strange because why does he want to go to TFC? Like, they're arguably in a worse position. You have two stars who, in Insigne and Bernadeschi, who, like, I don't even know if they're decent MLS players at this point. Like, they're fine. Like, it's just that's who you're paying all your money to. And Herdman comes, like, he obviously is a solid national team manager. He had both of the Canada women and Canada men playing, and probably the best I've seen them, right? So he managed the women for 108 games. They had 62 wins, 14 draws, and 32 losses. Bronze medals in the 2012 and 2016 Olympics, 2016 Algarve Cup. Canada men, 58 games, 36 wins, 8 draws, 14 losses. He didn't win any trophies.
But he had them in finals. When was
Right.
the last time you talked about a Canadian men's national team in a cup final?
That's a good point. I think my question is, like, we don't, like, he's a good manager, but I don't think he's ever managed a club team. And I think there's a big enough difference where your first club team being this Toronto FC version that is just in absolute dumpster fire. They're easily the worst team in the league. It's just like it's just an embarrassment, to be quite honest. With some bigger names who obviously haven't gotten along with many things in the past, and haven't really shown their value on the field. I think it's just a very weird move. It seems like almost a step down, like, to me, to TFC. But I think the drama in the Canada's federation that, like, they're also a dumpster fire. It's like, I don't know where you go from here, because, like, both situations are not good. But at least we're seeing success on the field with Canada, and I'm not sure he's going to see that same success. Or I kind of know he's not going to, at least in the near term, with Toronto.
So that's the point that I think I was honing in on, right? Is I'm not saying the current situation at Toronto FC is great. You do have a lot of money, like you said, invested in Insigne and Bernadeschi. And Herdman has never been a club manager before, and now he's going into a very mixed situation for his first job, right? I think everything you laid out there is 100% accurate, and I would be concerned if I was a TFC fan about that. I think one thing that I have maybe a little bit of a bright light hope for Herdman going to TFC is the fact of, one, TFC has to seem like a little bit less of a shit show than the Canadian Football Association right now. 100%. I think that's probably accurate. TFC might literally actually have more money than the Canadian Football Association right now. So
I mean, they're bankruptcy. Most teams probably do.
I think we've seen Toronto FC invest fully into managers before and give managers every opportunity to succeed, i.e., Greg Vanney for that long stretch that they were a dominant team, and even Bob Bradley, giving Bob Bradley the opportunity to sign Bernadeschi and Insigne, right? Like, giving him the opportunity to bring in probably 2-star players that he was asking and he was trying to bring in. It didn't work on the field once he got him there, but I think that's more of a Bob Bradley issue with those 2 stars than what the TFC front office was doing. So I think TFC has shown that they will invest and give a manager a long-term project, which I think is an issue with some MLS clubs nowadays, is they don't give managers enough time. So if you're going to give a national team manager his first coaching gig at the club level, you're going to have to understand he's going to take some time. He's going to take some failures. It's probably going to take some bad soccer at some points to learn through it and get past it, to be with these guys and managing them in the day in and the day out, right? So I do think that Toronto FC might actually be one of the better situations for him. He knows Canadian players too. He knows Jonathan Osorio. Jonathan Osorio was a mainstay of his national teams, and now you're coaching him at the club level. The other thing that I think could possibly be a positive is, right, it's one, Herdman sits down, he talks with Bernadeschi, he talks with Insigne. Do you want to be here? Yes or no? I'm taking over. This is how I'm going to do it. It's either you sell them both, probably back to Europe, and you're not going to make the money back that you bought both of them for, but you start with a fresh slate, clean slate. We're going to go do things our way. Or you can get two probably of, I'm going to say talent-wise, the best players in Major League Soccer to buy in and play for you. There's still a lot of roster overhaul that needs to happen. There's still a lot of things that need to change, and Herdman will hopefully put his stamp on that. But I think that there's a possibility for change, right? Like every club, I guess, has that. But I think especially with a brand new manager and someone who is so familiar with Canadian soccer, I think that there is a possibility for this to end up being successful, just as much as there's an opportunity for this to just blow up and burn into the ground. But I'm going to try to be a little optimistic about this. I don't know. Anything that I said.
I mean, to me, it's like I think there's a greater chance of it not working out, just because Insigne and Bernadeschi, like I don't see it, at least so far. But who knows? Like maybe he's the guy to get everyone on the same page. It's too late this season, but
yeah,
maybe they can make some turnaround in the off season. Kind of sign some new players that Herdman wants and thinks about. Also, maybe some Canadian national team players who really liked him or heard about him from their teammates want to go play for TFC now. There's opportunities, like you're saying. It's just TFC is just not, like, I wouldn't want to go there.
And look, I mean, trust me, I wouldn't want to play there either if I'm like the average MLS player running around, but I think it could work. I think, like you said, maybe he has some Canadian national team pulls he can pull out. Maybe Milan Borjan showing up to be goalkeeper for TFC next season. I don't know. I'm just saying. Like
Davies comes back.
Alfonso's coming. Jonathan David. It's a party.
Didn't Davies not actually really like Herdman though?
Yeah, I think.
And I feel like that's another issue that we didn't even touch on.
I think the only issue that I've really heard of with Herdman and the players was after Canada lost the Nations League final against the U.S., Herdman came out in his post-game interview and said that the Canadian FA doesn't financially support both its men's and women's national team enough to be successful in the region where you have Mexico and the United States financially supporting its national teams. That is, I think, I'm going to go with that because I'm not 100% sure. I think that is what John Herdman said during his post-game presser. I'm sure there's something out there that we can find about it. But I think John Herdman's issues with his players kind of came out. Like the players said that they just didn't do enough, and it wasn't anything with the FA, where Herdman was blaming more the FA than anything else. I think that's maybe where there was some tension, but I don't know.
If there was any tension, it's still sort of a reason to.
Yeah, 100%.
Especially when you have two Italians who like to cause tension.
Who have tensions with either the club or with whatever's going on with leadership.
Their names are just rotating around any tension.
Yeah, and Insigne just stormed off the field like last week. It's still going on. So TFC still a dumpster fire. John Herdman taking over, and hopefully some things can change for TFC fans in the future. Is all I will say. Let's continue on. Let's talk about the U.S. Open Cup semifinals, because as of last time we recorded and we talked, the semifinals were happening a day or two after. Inter Miami, they did defeat FC Cincinnati, tied 3-3 in regulations, but they did win 5-4 in PKs. Houston Dynamo, they defeated Real Salt Lake 3-1 in extra time. So we do have a U.S. Open Cup final at the end of next month, where Inter Miami will host the Houston Dynamo to see if Messi can win his second trophy in like a month's time with Inter Miami. I mean, it's absolutely insane. We can dive into what happened in these games, or we can just kind of talk a little bit about the final, and we can talk a little bit about Inter Miami if you want here. I'm going to let you direct where we go with this.
I mean, this first game just had it all, right? Like when I went to a bar to watch this with some friends. One of them is a big FC Cincinnati fan. And it was intense. Like I honestly was like, okay, Miami might lose. And then Inter Miami just FC Cincinnati just forgot how to play defense and just let Messi have a lot of space and didn't mark anyone in the box. And things just started going way downhill, which is not great. But I mean, even then, I still like Kubo with a nice goal to bring it back to 3-3. I forget who was in goal for Cincinnati, but that was
it was Alec Khan.
Oh, horrible game showing, man. I don't think he moved on any of those. I thought that was quite poor.
Yeah, he's the backup for a reason, you know.
Maybe he was just shocked. I don't know. Dynamo, I just could not be more wrong about this team at the start of the season. Like, just could not have been more wrong.
Where did you?
The last probably. I had Ben Olsen managing them.
Hang on, you had them. You did have them in last. Yes, you did.
Yeah. I probably had them wooden spoon, to be quite honest. I was not high on them, and they're better than I thought they would be. To be fair, though, like I was looking at this earlier because it was like the Dynamo were pretty good, but then I was looking and I was like, it's the Western Conference. They're like barely better than the Fire.
Yeah, the Western Conference is bad this year.
It's so bad. It's so skewed my opinions because like 5th or 6th in the Eastern Conference would be good for like 2nd or 3rd in the West. So that's
literally outside of LAFC and St. Louis, the Western Conference is bad. But look, Houston has, I will say, improved under Ben Olsen. I think
Ben Olsen's done a great job. No, I don't mean to rag on Houston.
Yeah.
I think they've actually done really well. Ben Olsen has been far better than I ever expected.
And Hector Herrera and
Hector Herrera's been awesome. I think that's one of the things I said in the preseason was what can Hector Herrera add to this team now with like, you know, I don't know. He's got a lot of weight on his shoulders for this season, and he's lived up to it.
100%.
I think going into the final, like Inter Miami is definitely going to be favored, but
especially at home,
right? And I think that's like another thing. It just feels like they play so many games at home. Like, what is going on? I just feel like they're always at home.
Yeah, it's like MLS is rigged. I tell you. It's not.
But yeah, I mean, I'm very much looking forward to the final. I think this U.S. Open Cup with Messi in it is a little bit louder this year for obvious reasons. I mean, all competitions with Messi in are. I mean, Leagues Cup couldn't have opened a better year.
Literally.
But yeah, I mean, can you go 2 for 2 with these trophies and then push for another? Like, at this point, anything, all bets are off with this team. I have yet to see them lose with Messi and Busquets and Alba. Like, I feel like everyone keeps going at the Messi level. Like, all my friends that they're like barely watch are like, damn, Messi is so good. I'm like, well, to be fair, they sort of overhauled their entire team and brought in 2 of the other best players at their positions in the world at one point. So
brought in 3 new U22 players, and you know, like all of that, right?
It's just like a completely different team. It's like I don't even know. Joseph is struggling for minutes at this point. So
I don't want to skip over. I don't want to skip over Houston because I do agree with people out there that like the, you know, for a lack of better phrasing here, like the jerk off of Messi and Inter Miami train is slightly annoying in every single MLS thing you talk about or read or whatever. I get why markets are doing it. I get why we do it. I get why MLS has a Messi page on its website. I get it. It is slightly annoying to an extent. So I will say
I think Houston, it's very annoying when it comes from people who never cared or really kind of shit on MLS in the past.
I mean, that's what Messi's going to bring, though, is going to bring more eyes. People who didn't care now they're interested.
I mean, I'm glad they do care and are interested. It's just have an open mind that the league actually it wasn't that bad before Messi came.
No.
And just because Messi can do this stuff, it's like he was turning the people in the World Cup, Vardadal or whatever his name is. Vardadal, the most expensive center back in the world.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying is I want to give some love to Houston because at the end of the day, Houston has been very good. They've been much improved under Ben Olsen, and I want to give them that love. And I also want to say congratulations for qualifying for the 2024 CONCACAF Champions Cup, because since Inter Miami already qualified through Leagues Cup, Houston, by just making the final, has qualified for Champions Cup. So good for Houston on being the next MLS team to qualify for the big tournament next year. But Hector Herrera, like we said, has been very good. Hector Herrera also knows Lionel Messi pretty well. Herrera played in La Liga for a very long time. So we will get to see a little bit of a rematch of Herrera versus Messi and Alba and Busquets and all of that. So that will be, I think, an interesting story point to watch once we get closer to Leagues Cup. And I think we kind of dive into it a little bit more. But I will, just as I complained 2 seconds ago about the Messi Inter Miami, only talking point, I say we get the Inter Miami talking point out for this episode here. So Inter Miami did debut Messi in Major League Soccer actual play as they defeated the Red Bulls 2-0. For a New Yorker like myself, seeing an MLS game shown on the screens of Times Square, where, there's already naturally thousands of people just walking and smell like shit, and the naked cowboy and the crapshoot looking Mickey and Minnie and all that shit walking around New York City.
Minions,
I hate Times Square. But yeah, it's Times Square. It's gross. But seeing that there was an MLS game being shown in Times Square and people like literally stopping to watch it and celebrate Messi's score was really cool. And if you haven't seen that video, it's out there on Twitter and Instagram. Just literally search like Messi Times Square and you'll see it. It's very, very cool. But the larger point is, right, Messi's MLS debut. He scores in his debut. Miami win, at Red Bull Arena against the Red Bulls 2-0. The larger point is that I want to ask you about and really get your opinion, because last week you gave me an over-under Messi's, kind of goal contributions, which I think I'm wrong about because Messi's now going to miss 3 games due to Argentinian national team play. Didn't even think about that. But do you think Inter Miami,
I didn't think about that either.
do you think Inter Miami make the playoffs? Because, like we just said, we now have Messi missing 3 games. Djordje Alba is officially stepping away from the Spanish national team. So that is one player that they will have. I think Busquets as well is no longer part of the Spanish national team. So you should have Busquets. You should still have Alba. You still do have those U21 initiative player signings that were brought in and have looked good, and maybe some more just energy underneath this Inter Miami squad. So even with Messi missing some games, with them sitting currently 14th in the Eastern Conference, 11 points back from Chicago in 9th, do you think that Messi and Miami have a shot at being featured in the Eastern Conference playoff picture?
So this is what I just did, because taking it seriously, if you were just to say, could they make it? Yeah, sure, they could make it, right? They're not eliminated. But I pulled up the rest of their matches because I just wanted to see, if, depending in my mind, is this a winnable game? Could they, is this team shit, Is it TFC, But,
well, one of them is TFC, I think, actually.
One of them is TFC, and one of them is the Fire. And there's 2 against Charlotte at the very end of the season. But they don't have an easy schedule, at all. No. They are home. I believe the top team here is home. They were at the Red Bulls, right?
Yeah, they're visiting. So they're home against Nashville, Sporting Kansas City. They're home against Toronto, home against NYCFC, Cincinnati, Charlotte, and Charlotte.
And they have away at LAFC, away at Atlanta, away at Orlando.
Yep.
Away at the
and away
Fire.
at Chicago.
Yeah. That's not easy. None of those are easy. To me, I think I'll say no, they don't make the playoffs.
Okay.
Which I feel like is kind of a hot take at this point because they haven't lost. They haven't lost.
Yes, but I think if
my thing is, they're playing Nashville. Nashville's got a chip on their shoulder now after the Leagues Cup. Then they go to Atlanta. Atlanta's, as weird as that team is, they're great. They're good. They're not.
You have an
they're good.
MVP candidate in Thiago Almada playing 10.
Who's not afraid of Messi.
So the reason why I'm with you and I don't think Miami actually makes the playoffs is the difficulty of schedule left with Messi.
That's why I'm glad I pulled it up, because before that I would have probably said yes. But after you look at their opponents, if they drop 2-3 of those games, it's pretty much over. Like, they're at the point where they are, I think, 8 points down. No, 11 points down.
Yeah,
from the
they
fire
have,
stuff.
and they have some
lot of
games.
Points, though. That's 4 matches.
They have some games that they're behind. I think other teams' physical games played wise as well. So that
they're at
22.
Yeah, they have 2 games behind. So theoretically, let's say they win those 2, even though the next 2 are against better teams. But we have 27 points, 5 points behind the playoff line.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm a little bit more like maybe, but the difficulty of schedule is just too hard. I think away to LAFC, away to Atlanta are both very rough games.
I think it's too tough. I think you're home against Nashville that you just beat in the final, but they just took you to the limits. You're away to LAFC, you're away to Atlanta, you're away to a rival in Orlando. Yes, you're hosting Toronto and NYCFC, whatever.
There's only like 2 to 3 easy games, right?
Yeah.
The TFC, they're home for, obviously. I mean, they theoretically should easily walk through that.
And the other point that I think the main point that I want to get to is you're finishing up the season with a back-to-back game against 2 back-to-back games against Charlotte, where Charlotte just took you to the brink in the Leagues Cup play. They went 4-4, went to PKs against Charlotte.
And Charlotte at home, like, they've got a lot of fans. Yeah,
100%.
That's a good atmosphere. That's a tough place to go into. And obviously, Busquets, Alba, Messi, they've had tough atmospheres. They're not afraid of Charlotte, right? But it's just not easy, especially for a lot of the other players. So I think the strength of schedule, I'd probably say no.
I'm going to go no as well, but part of me really does.
Would I be surprised if they made it? No, I would not be surprised. They'd be like, okay, yeah, well, theoretically.
Look, what's outside of the point of being a professional athlete in competition and wanting to win every single game you play, outside of that point, because that is a major point, I think, to this. But what I'm saying is, or what I'm thinking is, you're already qualified for CONCACAF Champions Cup next year. If you already won Leagues Cup, if you win the U.S. Open Cup, that's 2 titles in a season, qualifying for Champions League the next year. It's not the worst case scenario if you don't make the playoffs for Inter Miami.
Regroup next season.
Yeah.
I think it makes way more sense. Also, we didn't even mention Houston gets that CONCACAF Champions Cup League spot.
Yep. There you go.
Maybe you did mention it.
I did mention it, but it's fine. I want to give it. I want to give it
way
all
over my head.
All right, let's quickly go through some of the stuff from MLS Matchday 28. We're closing in on an hour, so I know let's see how quickly we can mention some of these things. Jason, I'll let you go first with one thing from Matchday 28 that you found interesting. You want to bring up? You want to tell?
I feel kind of bad because I've slammed TFC a bit too many times here, but the Crew is kind of who I want to talk about. It's really not even this specific game. I just think Wilfried Nancy has got the Crew playing incredibly well at a perfect time. I was looking at the standings as well. I mean, the Crew are on 42 points, which is 5th technically, but I think they're the second best team in the league, at least at the moment, based on form. I could probably make the argument after they just smashed Cincinnati that they're the best team in the league on form currently. Like, they lost Zelarayan, who is their top scorer, most assists, obviously the most goal contributions, best rating on the team. Like, he's made everything happen. They bring in Rossi, who we all know, we all love. We know what he can do in MLS. He's got his first goal this past week against TFC in 21st minute. it seems like that's a pretty seamless transition. Nancy's obviously like one of the better coaches. I think where I wanted to go with this topic was, where do you rate Wilfried Nancy currently as a head coach? And when I feel like since he hasn't won anything, he can't be that high. But for the coaches who haven't won a trophy yet, he's got to be top, maybe two at the worst. But I think like he's arguably currently the best coach in the league.
I think best coach in the league is a slight stretch, and I'm not fully disagreeing with you. I think slight stretch in the sense of right now, I think that there's a class of Jim Curtin, Tata Martino.
I mean, it's really hard to put him over some of those guys, right?
I'm going to say
if he wins a trophy, I think he's definitely in the conversation.
I think even without winning the trophy, you could argue he's third best manager in the league right now. I think to me, Tata and Jim Curtin are 1 and 2. If you ask me, managers in Major League Soccer, then I think that there is a giant group of managers that you can consider in that like 3 through 10. I think you can throw in Schmetzer. I think you can throw in Pat Noonan. I think you can throw in Wilfried Nancy. You can throw in just so many guys that I would be like, yeah, like that's fine. Even throw in Greg Vanny, even throw in Steve Cherundolo, Bradley Cardinell out in St. Louis. Like there's so many guys.
Like, wow, Wilfried Nancy's like one of the best coaches. You just named half the league.
Well, I'm saying like I think Wilfried Nancy I would throw in that kind of like higher tier of the second group. I think it's Curtin and Tata as like 1 and 2.
Yeah, because the I don't even know what the word is. Like the amount of games they've managed are just way higher, right? And they've won trophies.
Yeah. But I'm saying even if you look at veterans right now, like let's say like a Vermees and a Bruce Arena, right. I think there's a fair argument Wilfried Nancy is a better current manager than those two. I think
he's got the crew playing, I think, the best soccer.
Yes, that is the larger
outside of maybe Messi
that you were going with. Is I think I personally said this to you.
Maybe I went a little too far with my hot take.
No, I said this to you before we started the episode and we were talking a little bit. I think that the crew might be the hottest team right now in Major League Soccer. I think Cincinnati's the best, but I think
they're definitely the hottest.
I think Columbus is right there. I think you could argue Columbus is the best team in the league. There's a lot of positive things going on around Columbus right now, even with losing Zelarayan that we kind of chatted a little bit about last week. I mean, you have to say Columbus is one of the favorites in the Eastern Conference.
Yep.
I think I just want to quickly mention another team that has to be a favorite in the Eastern Conference as long as this man is wearing the 10 and his brand new 10 jersey is Atlanta United and Thiago Almada. Pretty much, we mentioned him a little bit before. Thiago Almada is keeping his name in the MVP candidate race 1,000%, if you ask me. Because
he's taken the lead in goal contributions.
21. He's taken the lead in goal contributions. He's taken the lead in assists. Right? Like he's leading pretty much every passing category you possibly can within Major League Soccer. This past week, he did score a 46-minute goal. And then he assisted on a 26-minute goal to Xande Silva, which was his first in Major League Soccer and for Atlanta United. And then also assisted on a 57th-minute goal to Miles Robinson, like a goal and 2 assists. He's just keeping his name up there. He's had reports and connections to Ajax, which is insane. And I know Ajax is now going after a brand new number 10. So he should be remaining with Atlanta United for the rest of the season. So I just have to give a shout out, give love to the World Cup winning Argentine attacking midfielder that wears number 10. That's not namely Lionel Messi. It's Thiago Almada. The kid's a stud, and he will surely break the MLS transfer record once he leaves this winter. And we said it 100 times, but the kid's an MVP candidate. You have to give him the flowers. Jason, give me something else. if you have anything else.
I had one, and then I wasn't expecting that.
Sorry.
Let's talk about. I mean, let's talk about Orlando, because I feel like they're kind of sneakily sticking up at the top of the Eastern Conference here with the big boys. And they win again against St. Louis. In St. Louis?
No, sorry, it was in Orlando.
In Orlando. But I mean, I think they're a really good team. They're doing it as a team too, right? Like, Duncan McGuire's been awesome. Facundo Torres has been good. Yeah, I think I had Pedro Galiz as my keeper of the year, and he's been pretty solid. But I think they're really doing it, as a team, which is fun. And I'd be kind of scared of them because they're really good, and a team that's like hitting that stride together is, I think, more dangerous than someone who's kind of doing it off of the shoulders of like one or two players.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've seen Almada, we've seen Hani Mukhtar, Messi currently just carrying teams, and it can take you really far. But I think Orlando isn't getting as much hype because they don't have that one player. So I don't know. I just kind of wanted to mention how good they've been doing. I don't have like a huge hot take on them, but I think it's cool that they're doing this, and I don't feel like they're getting the respect they deserve.
It's fair. Look, Orlando's currently sitting fourth in the Eastern Conference, tied with Philly and New England on 43 points. They have been much better as of late. Facundo Torres this past week had a brace to beat St. Louis, which St. Louis is, one of the best teams in the league right now. Orlando as a team is very good, and I will throw Oscar Pareja in that list of managers in that kind of second grouping that I want to give some love to. He's in the Pareja's in the Wilfred Nancy level of manager for me right now. I think we'll finish things up with one last point from match day 28, and it is the Copa Tejas derby, whatever the fuck they call the Texas.
Oh man, another team that I could not be more wrong about.
I mean, look, I'll give it some love right here, but game winner down in Texas this past weekend during stoppage time. FC Dallas center back Nkosi Tafari scores a looping header past Brad Stuver for Dallas to win the game 1-0 over Austin FC. Dallas currently sits in 8th place in the Western Conference on 33 points. They're looking, with the pack of Western Conference teams trying to lock down some type of playoff spot because it is a mess out in the Western Conference. But FC Dallas is a team I like. FC Dallas is a team that made a little bit of a run in Leagues Cup. And I point this out because I always feel like I really like FC Dallas, and I do mainly like FC Dallas. I do think they play better.
They've provided us with some awesome U.S. men's national players.
They have, but I'm saying I think I was just about to literally say I think they play better soccer on the field than just the reputation of them producing talent goes. So thank you for that point, Jason. But one player that I do think outside of just FC Dallas winning, FC Dallas, getting a big stoppage time winner is Nkosi Tafari, the 26-year-old American center back. Like, FC Dallas came out after this game and said Tafari is one of the best center backs in the league. I think he is, and I think because he plays in Dallas, he gets overlooked. He's very good defensively. He scores from time to time. I just want to give Tafari some love because he deserves it. And the game winner is a perfect opportunity to be like, this dude's really good. This dude should get some more high level, I think, media attention in the U.S. soccering world. And if you are a fan of MLS and you don't know who he is, then I think watch some of his games. Look out for him because FC Dallas doesn't always have the sexiest center back pairings or the sexiest back line or even the sexiest signings in the world, but they do have solid players that they do produce, to Jason's point, but they do have solid players that are just, solid MLS vets like Nkosi Tafari. And
I mean, they've always been like an MLS staple. Like, I feel like that's the reason that they're so likable. It's like FC Dallas is like just kind of like resonates with MLS.
Yeah, you can't really. They don't do anything like bad either.
They haven't really done anything bad. They haven't really made major enemies. Like
they've had
they
some
just
of the
kind of
best
quietly
teams
go.
historically.
Yeah, and they've had some awesome moments in MLS. They're just fun. You know what? If you're an FC Dallas fan, you got it pretty good, even though you guys haven't won anything in a while.
Yeah, and show up to your stadium and fill out your games more outside of when Messi's there. But other than that, all right,
Good
Jason,
point.
let's finish up the episode. We didn't do this last week, and I'll probably forget to do this like every other week. But is there a game, and that's why I'm going really slow right here. Is there a game that is either tomorrow?
You underestimate how crappy my computer is.
We do have some MLS midweek action. So there's Wednesday night action, and we also have obviously the Saturday and Sunday games going on. Is there a game
off the top of my head? Oh yeah, it's Houston versus Columbus.
Houston versus Columbus. You're
the
really
one that was
giving
up
Houston the love.
Hey, I think I gave Columbus the love on this podcast currently, and I said I was wrong about Houston, and I think this is a big game where we're actually going to kind of see a lot from both teams. Both are in positions where a win does pretty major things for them. So yeah, I think this is a big game. I think, I mean, I want to see if Columbus can keep rolling or if Houston's the buzzsaw that stops them, you know?
I'm going to go to Sunday where Lionel Messi goes out west and he takes on LAFC. You have the reigning MLS Cup champions. You have Lionel Messi. I'll hop right on that bandwagon and I'll just be there.
You could have picked a rematch of League Cup final. That's also tomorrow, which is an incredible game.
Look, there's so many with a double match day week. There's so many games. I mean, look, even Atlanta hosting Cincinnati tomorrow. Give me Almada versus Lucho Acosta, the star Argentine 10s. Okay, I'll take it. You know, like there's just so many different games that are going on this
Saturday, DC versus Chicago, a little MLS Aces derby.
So many people are excited about that one.
Wow.
You can't contain the energy.
Man.
On that
we're gonna learn a lot. Wait, we're gonna learn a lot about Inter Miami this week. Next time we come on the pod, we're either gonna definitively be able to be like, okay, maybe they're making the playoffs, or be like, okay, yep, not a chance.
All right, all their focus is on the Open Cup final. So we'll find out. We'll see. This has been a fun episode, Jason. A little long, but we're wrapping it up here. Thank you guys for listening, watching. If you guys got to this point, if you have, then again, go subscribe, rate, however and whatever you can do on whatever platform that you're on. It's always appreciated. Give us a follow at MLS Aces. And again, Jason didn't post it, but it's at Jason Vivang on Twitter. Yeah. And we will catch you guys.
Most people probably watch on Spotify anyway.
That's it. Don't worry. At Jason Vivang. That's it. All right. Let's catch you guys next week.
See ya.